All right, you are now live.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Accessibility Advisory Meeting for August 19th, 2024. The meeting is called to order at 4:08 p.m. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We'll start today's meeting with a roll call and AV check. When I call your name, I would ask each member to ensure their video and microphone is working. First is Glenn Babcock, and I imagine he hasn't joined us yet. Elizabeth?
No, Glenn has not joined yet.
Okay. And next we have Oliver Keith. Oliver Keith doesn't appear to be here.
Oliver has also sent regrets for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. And we next have Vivian Maratnam.
Yeah, here.
Liz Stool. Yes, okay.
Yep, I'm here.
Right. April Adams also sends her regrets. Next we have Rochelle Manette.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and then Deputy Mayor Kathy Deagle-Gaiman will join us later in the meeting. Councillor Trish Purdy.
Hello, I am here.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Russell.
Good afternoon from wonderful Lower Sackville.
Thank you. And next is me, and obviously you guys all know I can talk well and you guys can see me. So, and now for the approval of minutes, I will now ask if there are any errors or omissions for the minutes of July 15th, 2024. If there are none, I would invite a member to move the following motion. That the minutes of July 15th, 2024 Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting be approved as presented. So this requires a mover and seconder. So
I'll move.
Trish is the mover.
I will second.
Rochelle will second. I'll call for the question. All those in favor say A.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
And those opposed, please say nay. Okay, so then I can say that the motion has been carried. Yes?
Yep.
I did it. Awesome. Okay, so for the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions, we will now move on to the approval of the order of business for today's meeting. To our legislative assistant, are there any changes to today's agenda?
There are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
I will invite a member of the committee to move the following motion that the agenda be approved as presented, amended. I'm getting better at this.
Yep. I move that the agenda, that we approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, that's great. So that means Paul
And
Russell.
seconded from Liz.
Oh, okay. And then seconded from Liz. So the motion has. Oh, okay. So then I'll call to, I'm almost good. I almost made no mistakes. Now I made the mistake. Okay. So I'll call for the question. All those in favor say A. Raise
A.
their hands. Okay. And those opposed? Okay. The motion has been carried. And now next for business arising out of the minutes, there are none. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. I will now ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. Okay, if there are no declarations, then I guess the meeting can proceed. We will now move on to item 6.1, temporary pedestrian travel paths through work sites. This item was deferred from the June 3rd, 2024 meeting. I will now invite Krista Cumming Manager of Engineering Design, to provide a brief recap of her previous presentation. You can go now, Krista.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to draw people's attention to, hoping you can hear me okay, just shout out if you can't, okay?
Yes, great.
So there was a copy of the report provided as part of the meeting package, and I'm hoping that people had a chance to take a look at it. It is, there's a lot in there. So I think that it's important for people to reflect on that document if they can, to kind of dig into the issue. And yeah, there's a lot of information in there. But I would also like to share the PowerPoint presentation that we had prepared for the meeting that I attended on June 3rd. And so I'm going to try to share my screen, and I'll just go through it quickly to kind of recap some of the main points.
So Krista, I will just promote you to co-host, and then you'll be able to share your screen.
Oh, okay. Or you could share it if you wanted to. I don't know, Elizabeth, if...
Up to you. I just promoted you to co-host. You can go
Okay.
ahead and share it if you'd like. If you're having issues, I
Okay.
can certainly.
Sure. Thanks. Let's try here. Here we go. Okay, great. I hope this works. Tell me if you're not seeing... Is everyone seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So I can't see you anymore, but
Okay,
that's beside the point.
It's not on like presentation mode, if that is something that you wanted to.
Oh, yes, that's helpful. It's not showing it in presentation mode. Well, that's okay. You
Yeah,
can
that's
still
fine.
see it just in the normal. Is that all right?
We are tight for time. Like, this is
Yeah.
great. We can
Just go
we
ahead.
can-
Okay,
Sure.
that's great. Okay, so I delivered a presentation on June 3rd, and I'll just recap. There was a motion from the Transportation Standing Committee on February 25th, 2021, and I'll just read it out. Request a staff report recommending establishing new standards for municipal utility and abutter work in the right-of-way to ensure accessibility and detectability for pedestrians be maintained at all times. So the topic of this report is standards for accessibility and detectability for pedestrians in the right-of-way during construction. And I'll kind of skip over a few slides here. We talk about the legislative authority. There's a bunch of background information, but I think really the main thing to draw to the attention of the committee is that kind of the finding is that the CSA standard B561 2023 or B651 23 respecting accessibility in the built environment is the appropriate engineering standard to refer to for pedestrian paths during construction. And we had found through the preparation of the report and research associated that there were some opportunities for improvement when we did a comparison of the CSA standard to our existing standards and guidelines. And we found, for example, that there was an opportunity to be more specific about minimum pedestrian route widths and heights, opportunities for signage and barricades to be improved in terms of cane detectability, and opportunities to provide better high visibility and continuous channelization specifications to help guide pedestrians through temporary routes and around hazards. And then the last of the four opportunities for improvement was specifically ramp criteria to improve accessibility and detectability. And I guess all four of these points, really, the idea is that our standards were sort of generally covering off on these topics, but there was room for improvement in terms of being specific and direct about what we're really asking for so that it's not left open to interpretation. And I think the idea too is that when things are left open for interpretation, it can cause a lot of, confusion and sort of enforcement issues and differences in interpretation that could otherwise be cleared up by just being more direct. And the report had 3 recommended next steps. One was for infrastructure maintenance and operations, which is a group within HRM Public Works, to implement cane detectable barriers for use this summer. And that is currently taking place. So our sort of work that is done in-house by maintenance and operations uses cane detectable barriers. The second next step was to update the temporary, the HRM Temporary Workplace Traffic Control Manual Supplement, which is a very long name for a supplemental document to the provincial standard for temporary workplace traffic control. And for us to update that document to come in line with the CSA standard for use in our construction projects that are tendered by HRM and also that are constructed by developers. So both refer to this supplement document. And then the third next step was to update the construction management plan administrative order to come in line with these same CSA standards. So that's the end of the recap of my presentation. And my thought was that I would like to ask the committee, both if they have any comments or questions about the report, but then I think also maybe more importantly is just to open the dialogue on issues that people see with respect to accessibility near construction sites. Because I think that what we really would like to do is to capture some thoughts from the committee about their experiences and look to the committee for some guidance with respect to how to make things better.
Thank you, Krista. So now we're going to go down the list of members for questions and comments. What I'd like to highlight is that we have 3 items this evening and we are tight for time. So I will ask to keep what you need to say as well edited as possible. I understand that I think a lot of us would have a lot to share. The legislative assistant will keep track of time and let us know if one of us is over speaking. So just keep an eye out of it and don't take it personally if we are having to cut you down a little on what you're sharing. So first on the list is Rochelle Manette.
Yes, thank you. I do have some questions. I actually, is anyone else getting an echo? Sorry, my braid kit.
It's the same as me too. I get it too. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, sorry if I'm echoing or if anyone else is echoing. I'm going to try to not pay attention to it. I have a bunch of questions that I wrote down last time, and I think one may have been addressed, but I don't remember the answer. I think many of them are short questions, but if I get cut off, that's fine. It'll be okay. I'll ask them in importance of order of importance, I guess.
I'll leave some space towards the end in case somebody else wanted to jump back in.
Cool. So yeah, the first one was, and I'm not sure if this is in the the current, it's not a policy, it's something, I can't remember the name of it. Anyways. But the question that I had was around what is considered a necessary amount of time that a construction project is taking place for temporary pathways to be required. Because I've seen some things that someone will essentially say oh, this is just going to take a day, so they block off a whole street, but there's not really or a whole sidewalk, but they haven't opted for an accessible travel path. So, and then when I've called 311, they've been well, this is just short, so we didn't do anything for it. So I guess I'm wondering if there's already something in place and it's just not being followed, or if that is a detail that needs to be added to this. It's not a bylaw. I can't remember the word that you said for it.
It's okay. So there are a few different documents. It's not,
Okay.
Don't feel, badly about being a bit confused about it. There are a couple of different references depending on the type of project. I am trying to think of right off the top of my head. I don't think that we have like a strict requirement for when a temporary path has to be provided. It's on the basis of, I guess it's a few different factors. It's how disruptive the closure or partial closure is. Something that comes to mind, like as an engineer working for the municipality, is you want to make sure that people always do have a safe way to go, and that it's a reasonable, safe way to go. And so I guess that's kind of the philosophy that we follow. There would always be some way to go, but it may not be the shortest route. And I guess the focus for us really is on safety and trying to provide a safe route for people, and to try to intercept if we think that people are going to be shortcutting or something that it has to be reasonable. If it's really, really tempting to go the wrong way, you want to try to do something about it to make it obvious that what the safe thing to do is.
Right. And like provide a better option than like the dangerous way, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a
Right.
few examples that I will try not to get into, but
Right. Makes sense.
I'm sure we can all think of. Yeah, so there's no strict like you must do this if you're doing that, other than you need to provide for public safety and you need to provide a route. People need to
Right.
get places, so you need to provide a route that is safe
Okay.
for them to get where they need to go.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, and so I don't know if there is still like editing being done to the documents. Like it might be something to consider adding like just a little extra language too, so that people can refer to it. But yeah, that is something I've come across for sure on my routes. What other questions? Oh, this is a big one. I live on Almond Street, and currently it seems like there are several different construction projects, and each of them, well, some of them haven't, but most of them have put some sort of like pedestrian pathway that is temporary. But because there's so many conflicting ones, like there is no more safe and short path essentially. And when it comes to accessibility, like the length of that path, having to go across the street several times, essentially like a pinball machine, is a pretty not great accessibility time, both for people who like have mobility challenges, but I think also if you're someone with any like sensory related disabilities, if you're visually impaired, like having to cross the street that many times in places that didn't previously exist is probably not ideal. That would be my assumption. So I guess that is something that needs to be looked at. And I know that like there's only so much summer, there's only so much weather that is appropriate for doing construction projects, but this entire like 2-month period has had like several construction projects on Almond Street going on at least, and that's like the one I'm thinking of now because I literally see it every day. Yeah, and then at the same time, because of all these conflicting construction projects, sometimes there just isn't a safe pathway. There's like the Roby and Almond intersection right now has not one single accessible like intersection pathway, which I did write to 311, haven't gotten a response yet, so I guess we'll see about that. But yeah, so just like keeping all these things in mind of like how many different projects are going on will also affect how accessible one project is. So that also is something to keep in mind, I suppose. And I guess the last piece, and this is not necessarily pedestrian, so I don't know if this is really like relevant, but around like accessible parking spots, and those being replaced for temporary ones. And I think it does affect pedestrian travel based on like where people are walking from their cars, and that like an accessible parking space is no longer accessible if it is several blocks away, and on top of that, like that several blocks away parking spot is supposed to be for a different area to make that spot accessible. So it sort of like defeats the purpose of accessible parking spots in the first place. But I don't know if that is under your purview, if it is technically more pedestrian related, but probably is something that like transportation and parking should be involved in this. I assume they are in some capacity. So things that like multiple areas of infrastructure and planning would need to probably talk to each other about. Okay, that's all my questions. I speed ran through them.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Oh, yeah, and thank you, Rochelle. Next, we have Deputy Mayor Kathy Deagle-Gaiman. I don't think she's made it yet, Elizabeth. She's not on here. You're on mute.
She has not joined.
She has not joined. I'll ask
No.
again towards the end. Next, we have Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you. So I guess my question is, what happens when these infractions aren't rectified? What recourse do the pedestrians have?
That's a good question. You mean if something, something
Yeah,
in
like
the
if
right-
there's a sign that's in a dangerous spot and it's called into 311 and it's not rectified, like what is the next step? Like what should they? What's the consequence, or what's the?
Yeah.
The consequence? Yeah, well, I guess for staff, we really appreciate when people do call in things that are, unsafe or problematic or hazards. We do have staff people who are, dedicated to construction inspection, for example, who work with contractors to make sure that their setups in the right of way are appropriate and safe for the public. We have people in development engineering who have a similar role to follow up with contractors if unsafe conditions are observed. Their permits can be revoked, I guess, for the work in the right of way. A permit could be revoked, and they could be required to remove their work from the right of way. You could also have instances of contract consequences with people who are working directly for the municipality. So I guess there's a difference between developers that are working for themselves and using the right of way space, and then people that are directly working for the municipality. There would be the consequences relating to their contract and performance of their contract. And then there are also, I think, fines under the bylaws that are sort of smaller in dollar value. I think it's like $158 or something like that. So because of that very small dollar value, the aim of staff is to ensure compliance by any means possible, to try to get people into compliance, because it's the same contractors that are typically working in the right of way. It's better if we have a shared understanding of the importance of public safety. And I think that there is a common ground there between people that, no one's meaning to go about their day to hurt people. So if we can work on that common understanding and try to make sure that that efforts are being placed in areas to make things safe. I know that's kind of a fluffy overarching statement, but I do really believe that it's true. We have to work with people, and they're the same people that we always see, and $168 fine isn't going to do anything. It's, you have to get at the core of the problem. Like, where's the misunderstanding? How can we make this better?
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Trish. Next, we have Councillor Paul Russell.
Great, thank you very much. In the last, I think it was, meeting, I showed a picture of a sign that I took in Toronto, where it was a sign indicating a problem and people had to walk around it. And there was a post on either side of the sign with a base around it. So it made the post for the sign as wide as the sign, instead of having a single post up the middle that would have still been detected by someone with a cane. But they might have walked into the sign. In this case, because there was a post on either side of it, it made it easier. And Krista, I believe you have a copy of that image. If not, I can certainly send it to you. So if there could be consideration for that on a go-forward basis, that would be great. There's a second example that I saw in Halifax along University Ave a year or two ago, where there was construction going on by the IWK, and they had the They had the sidewalk barricaded, but they had the sidewalk barricaded 10 or 20 feet after the ramp that goes down to the street. So if you were a wheelchair user, you might not see it, you might not notice it right away. You get 10 or 20 feet down the street, and then you get the barricade and you have to backtrack. Same thing if you're blind, you would not be able to see it, and so you would have to backtrack that 10 or 20 feet and then have to go across the street because there was nowhere on that side of the street that provided a place to go. So you would have to cross over into the median on University Ave. It didn't seem like a good setup for that type of thing. So probably if there is a curb cut for wheelchair users, the barricade should probably be there instead of 10, 20, 30 feet down the road. I'll just leave that with you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Liz Dool.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what someone was saying before. I remember that what Paul was talking about. It's close to the IWK hospital on University. It was not comfortable. It seemed a little too narrow as well. I was worried about people that might trip and fall off the side of it, especially older people that had to cross the median and things like that. But I agree with that. Anyway, I guess it just depends. Like I'm thinking of deaf or hard of hearing, late deafened people. We like the wood platforms that aren't very stable. We don't really like that. Like when a person's coming from the other way and it kind of doesn't feel stable, the flooring moves around. Like it should be stronger, and that would make people feel safer, as well as maybe introducing a rail, which would help stabilize people as well. The sign discussion was really good as well. I think it's also important to have lights, especially at night, because if it's too dark, people struggle to see where to walk safely. And I think that's it for me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Liz. So Elizabeth, just to clarify, Glenn Babcock and Oliver Keith have both sent their regrets?
I did not receive, I received regrets from Oliver. I didn't
okay.
receive any regrets from Glenn, I don't believe. I can definitely double check my inbox,
okay.
but
So
they are not
he's-
currently in the meeting.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Next we have Vivian.
Yeah, my only question was around just the reporting and enforcement, which was already answered. So good to move forward.
Okay, great. Next would be me. If Elizabeth can help me with some pictures that I have offered up. Rochelle will enjoy it because I did cover one slide that has Almond Street in mind. So rub your hands together and be ready to point these out. So Elizabeth, how could we proceed?
So I can share those on my screen. Those
Sure.
were, I did send those to Krista beforehand.
Right.
Chris, I believe you would have received those. I know you did mention, Krista, that you likely wouldn't be able to speak to them directly, but that members would be
It just, I
free
think
to
it just
share
helps.
issues
Yeah.
that they've encountered with accessibility. So just hold on a moment. I will bring them up and I'll share my screen.
Thank you.
Everyone see that first image I'm sharing there? It looks
Yeah, so this,
yeah.
yeah,
Let's make
it's
it a
there.
little- this is asking.
For context, this is a site that has long been resolved. It's on Brunswick and Cogswell. It's all smooth now. Everything is great. However, for a very long extended period of time to cross. If you can notice, the surface is incredibly uneven. The gravel that has been used, you know, when you have this much traffic going over it, it just grinds around. Anyone who has mobility issues to walk upon those paths, it's very uneven. You can definitely roll an ankle with that. Even if you notice, if somebody is even just for a minute inattentive of the path that they're going through, if they have visual impairment, you can tell there's such uneven platforms that you can easily fall into. Like, this is what I mean. Like, I'm glad you mentioned about infractions, but it just seems like they don't have a really big concept of liability. Like, if somebody would have, like, especially an elderly person would have fallen into that, broke their hip, like that, these are really serious injuries, you know, like I think I don't understand why it had gone on this long without anybody stepping in. I do understand that there is an importance for the public to call 311 and highlight these issues. But I really feel that an event like this kind of setup, could have easily been supervised, could have easily been noticeable that there's somebody here that didn't put enough consideration into the fact that it's an incredibly uneven path. So one question that is brought up by this particular slide is there any use of metal platforms? I mean, I remember once upon a time we would see these everywhere, and it just feels like recently I see them nowhere. To be able to kind of, because I wish I had like the ability to take my mouse and go over it so you could see what I mean. But it's just the fact, like, there's just not enough of a like an even platform to rely on to gravel. I don't think it's a very, pardon my word, I don't think it's a very clever way to move forward. Like, I just wondering if there are, like, this is question one, are there metal platforms that can be put in place instead of this?
I guess it depends on the application. We wouldn't normally use metal plates because they can be slippery when they're wet.
Okay.
So what we would look for is like a stable, firm surface. And speaking to the other point about, you know, a shaky wooden platform wouldn't be considered something that we would look for. And then, you know, gravel, like you're seeing there, is also not ideal. So I think, like, point taken, that that's an example of something that I think needs to need to be considered further. Yeah. And I guess the other thing is that surfaces like compacted gravel need to be maintained in order to be functional. And yeah, it's hard.
One question I would have, though,
comment on.
True, but like the one question I have, because they obviously knew that this particular construction project was going to be for a length of time, that why was there no like temporary paving of those paths?
What I was going to say is that I can't comment on these specific construction projects. I wasn't involved in that project at all, and it wouldn't be right for me to comment on the circumstances that I don't know anything about, like other than one image. So
right. Okay, but it's just to kind of, as like we were mentioning on timeline, like time frame, how long that the construction is going to be established, like what measures could be put in place if we were already knowing that it would be, for example, I'm not talking in fact, I'm talking in hypotheticals, like if they know they're going to be there for a month or 2 months, like if they would have been able to establish, you know, something like a temporary paving, just to at least guarantee that there's going to be a more even surface for people to cross, especially at that intersection. That's just like a comment. It's like a suggestion. You don't need to answer to that. I totally understand. What I'd like to do as well is, would I be able to highlight, because there's like 3-4 slides, and I'll just go through them quicker. And be able to place like a question or comment for each of them, if Elizabeth can help me with this, and I'll cue to get to the other one. Is that fine?
I also just wanted to let you know, Chair, that Glenn and Deputy
Yes.
Mayor Degel Gammon have joined. So I
Yes.
don't know if you would like to give them a chance to answer or ask questions, pardon me.
Sure.
Or if you're still, if you would
I
like.
think I just want to go through it, and then I actually might inspire a question for them as well to
Okay.
comment on, if that's okay.
Just one
Sure.
second. That was
Okay.
the other image you had shared with me that I
Yes.
had
Yeah.
shared with Krista as well.
Right. And so this is just like as an example, all too often, many of us who are pedestrians, we will walk at length without any notice of a sidewalk closure ahead. So obviously we would need kind of a signage in advance to know, hey, on this street, there is one going on, because this is on Cogswell. If we would have been given a notice when we were at the corner of, like when we were at the traffic circle from, I think it's called South Park Street and Cogswell, then it would have given us a heads up to make sure to cross onto the other side and go down that way. But all too often, we're walking and then without notice, sidewalk closed. So we're left with some liabilities here. We're left that we have to walk onto the street against opposing traffic. Or the second option is that we have to jaywalk across to the other. And here, this is, I think, a 3 to 4, I think it's a 3-lane road. So it is clearly a little dangerous to be dodging oncoming traffic, especially at that area where it's known for speed. So the question would be, it's like for temporary crosswalks, are we able to implement those more frequently, or to look at making those a thing? The second clip I would like to get to, if Elizabeth can share the next one. I think what I'll opt, if you know the one that's at the corner of Duke and Barrington. Oh, okay. Well, while we're here, like, this is the thing that we're still talking about platforms, is just, I was there the other day. I took this picture on Almond Street a few weeks ago. So this is like, we're talking about time frame. They know this is going to be like this for a length of time. I want to commend Rochelle for calling this a pinball game, because it is true. When you walk here, they're telling you you should cross. You can't cross anywhere, so you got to walk down. There is a temporary crosswalk. However, the way that it is for somebody who's older, who has an inability to walk at length, it's like exactly that. Your ability to walk at length is actually, you're going to have to walk at an even longer path. So I just feel like there's no considerations for shortening the walking path for people to take. Because obviously, if it's a detour for drivers can drive. They don't feel the physical pain of having to go an extra 500 meters if you have a mobility challenge. So there's that. And then the last one, I promise, because I want to give time to the two other people, the one at corner of Duke and Barrington that is current, and I took the picture yesterday. And so here, if you haven't noticed, like I took this picture when I got out of Scotia Square, and what kind of shocks me is that there was actually no, what do you call it? I'm sorry. There was no like ramp, not even a ramp. Like you would have to step down from the sidewalk to be able to cross the path. So here, obviously, if you want to go down towards Lower Waters Street, there is a path to get there. But if you really want to get to Barrington Street, it's not so easy either, because of traffic and how, you're kind of like, there's not enough room even onto the sidewalk. I know they want to give us notice of a barricade, but it's just like, we're still kind of technically steered out onto the street in corners where people turn right on a whim. So that's the other issue and concern I have, is that sometimes in order to avoid a barricade, we're usually often steered onto the street, most notably at corners. And I've had a few close calls. So that would be just what I'd like to mention, especially infraction. They're going to be there for a long time. They knew they were going to be there. I'm just really personally surprised, especially that there are no real ramps in place at that corner for people to come down or to go up to get to Scotia Square. So that would be what I have to share, and I wanted to give a space to other people. They're all comments, and I understand there are questions that you cannot answer. So we will move to Councillor Deagle-Gaiman if she has something to comment or question on this topic.
Sorry about that, Celine. Where I just joined, no,
Sure.
I have no questions. I'm playing catch up. I'll have to listen
Okay.
for more.
Okay, thank you so much. And you mentioned Glenn Babcock has also joined us. Would you have a
Correct.
question or comment? We cannot see your image and we cannot hear you.
Asking Glenn to unmute. Doesn't seem to be working. It's showing he's in the meeting, but
Okay.
his audio or video doesn't seem to be turning on at this time.
Okay. Maybe to exit and come back, Glenn, if you can. So to ask Elizabeth, since we have two other items on the go, do we have any spare time if anybody else, any other members wanted to add anything to this topic, to this item?
So it's been about 20 or so minutes for the question and answer period that you
Sure.
could probably maybe squeeze in a few more minutes if someone else had, if
Sure.
there's maybe
Okay.
one question or two, but
Mhm.
probably no more than a few minutes.
That's
We
okay.
want to make sure we get to all the items.
Absolutely. So if is there anybody else who would have something to share or to add from their comment? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Krista, for your presentation and hearing us out. And best of luck on this project. I understand it. There's a lot of complexities to planning all of these things. So thank you for showing up. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, and thanks to the committee for sharing your perspectives. I did take a lot of notes, and we are trying to make things better. So I really appreciate you taking the time to entertain the subject.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. So, all right. So now we're at correspondence, petitions, and delegations. To our clerk, has any correspondence been received?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office.
Okay. And for petitions, to our clerk, are there any petitions to be presented?
No petitions have been received.
Thank you. There are none. Information brought forward, there are none. Next on our agenda is a presentation from Maria Jacobs, Active Transportation Planner, and Courtney Pine, Team Lead, Senior Traffic and Transportation Engineer, WSP Canada, regarding the Alderney Drive Functional Plan. You can proceed with your presentation.
Hi, can you hear me? And can you see me? Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Okay. Actually, I'm the active transportation planner with Public Works at HRM here. And this is a functional plan. So it starts at Alderney Wise, or what we would call just in front of the Sportsplex. And it's a corridor from that existing on-street bikeway route all the way down to Alderney Landing and beyond for buses. But we'll get into it as we're presenting. And then Courtney Pine and I think Brianna is going to present as well. They're both with WSP, and they're the contractors that we would hire, consultants that we hired to develop these concepts. And yeah, I think I'll just leave it to that, and then we have some questions afterwards if we have time. All right, thanks. Courtney, are you there with or Brianna?
I am here as well as Brianna is also available. Are we able to give Brianna sharing privileges?
Yeah, absolutely. I promoted you, Courtney, to co-host, but I can promote
Don't mind
Brianna
swap
as
it for
well.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
And did you want her to give the present, or do you have the presentation there, Courtney?
Yep, Brianna's going to share a screen, and then we're going to go half and half.
Okay, great.
Alrighty, are you guys able to see yet?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. So I will start the presentation and give kind of a background for the project, and then Courtney will take you through the concept options, and I'll try to keep my section quick so there's plenty of time for the concept options and question period. So the goals of this meeting is for us to provide an overview of the project and a review of the work that's been completed so far. Then Courtney will review the concept options, and we'll talk about the public feedback that we've received so far. And then we'll have the question and answer period. And we wanted to let you guys know that the survey is still open for whoever might want to respond to that. I think the link is in the meeting invite, but it's also down here.
Yeah, Brianna, sorry. I also wanted to mention, I was going to do it at the end, but we also have two walkthrough audits coming up next Monday and Wednesday. So if anybody from this group wants to participate, it's set up for stakeholders, but anybody from this work, from this committee, if they want to participate, they're more than welcome to join us on Monday afternoon and Wednesday afternoon. Thanks.
So the objective of this project is to develop an Alderney Drive functional plan for a transit corridor between Wise Road and Dundas Street, and an all ages and abilities AAA active transportation route between the Dartmouth Harbourfront Trail and the Wise Road and Thistle Street intersection. So here I'm showing a map that shows kind of what I just described, with a pink dotted line for the active transportation corridor for this project, and the purple solid line being the transit corridor for this project. So for municipal guidance, we referred to the IMP, the Integrated Mobility Plan. This kind of is a promotion of healthy living, and it identified a AAA bicycle network and a rapid transit strategy route along Alderney Drive. So here I'm showing maps of the bikeway routes that go along Alderney Drive and the rapid strategy planned route that also goes along Alderney Drive. We also referred to the active transportation priorities plan, which is to double the number of trips made on foot and by bike by 2026. So this project will help facilitate that. So far in the project, we've initiated the project, established an existing conditions of the project study area, and we've developed 3 conceptual designs for the study corridor. And now we're conducting stakeholder engagement, and we've done the public engagement, and then we will evaluate the conceptual designs based on feedback, select a preferred option to take to functional design and report. So currently there's a mix of signalized intersections, RFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacons crossings, and RA5 crossings along the corridor for the active transportation section. And this, I'm now showing an image of the grade along the corridor. So along the waterfront portion, it's pretty flat, but there are some significant grades as you continue up the hill, about 8%. And I'll show a few cross sections of the existing area. So this is what Wise Road is looking like now. This is a constrained area for the project. There's a retaining wall on the right side and lots of mature trees that we would like to avoid. And then on Windmill Road, this is a pinch point area, and it still has the retaining wall, and the higher grade of the street is on this section. On Alderney Drive, there are a lot of mature trees and some buildings with frontage close to the road. And on Auchterlonie Street, there is a railway crossing to consider and a high volume of pedestrians in the area. So now I'm showing a map of the existing and proposed cycling network, and it shows the section for our project in dashed green. And the core pedestrian network in the area. So shown in black is the existing sidewalk, and in green is existing multi-use pathways. So there's plenty of facilities in the area currently. And I won't talk very much about the traffic volume data, but in September 2024, volumes were collected at these 8 intersections, and we used that to inform our concept designs. So I'll turn it over to Courtney.
Sounds good. Let's jump into it. So all of our options, we have 3 options here, and they're quite consistent coming from the Wise Thistle intersection down through to Auchterlonie, as that's the area there we're focusing with our active transportation concepts, and then from Auchterlonie down along Alderney to Dundas would be the option where we're just focusing on a transit option. So we have some different colors here shown on the screen. What we have is green is illustrating a unidirectional cycling facility option. Some is on street with precast bollards that are shown there in cyan blue, whereas the other side of the street, in this case, the left side of Alderney, would be a raised facility. So therefore there would be curb, and then you'd be at the same height as like the sidewalk users in a raised facility. And there'd be a small portion here that's shown in yellow as a multi-use pathway that would be an asphalt surface that would then tie into the existing multi-use pathway there at the corner of Thistle and Wise Road. The transit information here is pretty much similar to what would be out there today, with some enhanced pavement markings, and our cyclists would also share that same transit approach lane there from Wise turning onto Alderney Drive. Next slide. As we continue down the hill on Alderney Drive with the same option we just saw on the previous screen, what we're looking at here is essentially reallocating the existing curb-to-curb space to assist us with having an on-street unidirectional cycle lane. So this would have those precast curbs and the flexible green bollards similar to Wise Road on the harbor side or on the bottom side of this page here, whereas the other side, so the side of the Dartmouth Common, would have a raised facility for our unidirectional cyclists. I lost my screen. Is that just me, or did everybody lose the screen?
Sorry, disconnected for a minute.
No worries, we'll pop back on. There we go. And then in the same direction they're coming towards the bridge terminal, we actually have allocated one of the lanes here to have dedicated transit lane, which is that kind of that peach red color there, illustrating that movement. As we keep going on to the next slide, here we have our unidirectionals kind of combined with the other unidirectional facility near Church Street. So therefore we'd have an on-street bi-directional facility that would utilize one of the vehicle lanes. So therefore we'd be taking away one of the vehicle lanes as you kind of approach Ochterlony. This here would have that precast curb and the green flexible bollards again. However, we'd have two-way cycling facilities there provided. We still have that transit lane going up the hill towards the bridge terminal. Next slide. And then that bi-direction facility I just mentioned would actually come off street. So therefore you can see how we kind of veer slightly on the harbor side there to kind of be behind the curb. This would be still a two-way facility for our cyclists with parallel sidewalk. However, a new retaining wall be required. There might be some encroachment there to the municipal parking lot to be able to kind of accommodate this facility to allow for our transit lanes to begin to continue down Alderney Drive past the Ochterlony Street intersection. To tie into the Dartmouth Harbourfront, our bi-directional facility actually transition to a multi-use pathway. So therefore our cyclists and people that are on foot or rolling would be combined there in that yellow multi-use pathway, which would be an asphalt surface coming down to the railway crossing. That's where our project scope does end. And then those can use the Dartmouth Harbourfront Trail accordingly. So that's concept A. We're going to walk through that same area again, but concept B. So concept B is going to be focusing a little bit more on a transit option on both sides. So kind of coming in and outgoing transit movements, as well as we're focusing more on a multi-use pathway facility for this option. So very similar to what we saw before, we would have a unidirectional facility that would tie into the existing Wise Road bike lanes going through the skate park area. That multi-use pathways on the other side again on the Dartmouth Commons, tying into the Wise Road on that side. And then at the intersection itself of Alderney, Wise, and Windmill, we'd have a unidirectional crossing to cross the intersection, and then we're onto a multi-use pathway coming down the hill, kind of along the edge there of Senate Hill. We have our transit facility a little bit enhanced here. We have a little bit longer of a lane provided for our transit users to be able to jump and get into their own lane at the intersection. And we've also recommended for this option here to actually close the channelized right turn if you're traveling from Wise Road, making that right turn onto Windmill Road. So we've provided a dedicated right turn lane. However, we've removed the channelization component of that right turn lane. So as we continue down the hill on the next slide, we have transit lanes provided inbound and outbound, or up the hill and down the hill here in this picture. We have our multi-use path, which is asphalt surface on the water side as we continue down the hill. The sidewalk infrastructure would remain the same as it would navigate into the Dartmouth Common. On the next slide, we have that same facility continuing. So we have the transit lane still on both sides. In this case here, they've taken away essentially a vehicle lane. So we have one vehicle lane provided and one transit lane in each direction. We still have that same asphalt multi-use pathway as we continue. Next slide. And this one here is a little bit different. This allows for the transit user still to have that opportunity to take that lane on the approach to the Ochterlony Drive intersection. However, our multi-use pathway kind of veers down to be at the same grade as the municipal parking lot to navigate through and then make that connection down to that same railway crossing location to get access to the Dartmouth Harbourfront Trail. Alrighty, so let's go to option C, which is our third and final option that we have provided to the public and looking for feedback from our stakeholders on. This option here is looking at seeing kind of what can we do for transit, cyclists, and those that are utilizing the sidewalk kind of all here. I have to note that this one is the most impactful on utilities and as well as the Dartmouth Common. Both option A and B did have some impact to some trees. They did have that retaining wall to be either relocated slightly or to be relocated a little bit further into the Dartmouth Common, and we can definitely get into that if anybody has any questions on that. But this option here, option C, does have the most impact to the Dartmouth Common wall, which therefore would need to be moved inward and therefore may impact some of the grading there as well as some of the trees. However, this option here does kind of get the vision of the corridor here for all users as much as possible. So walking into this, you're going to see some similarities from option B and some from option A, just combined to try and get both of them together in the same space. So concept C, coming from the Thistle Wise Road intersection, we do have our facility coming through the skate park there and aligning at the Wise Windmill Alderney intersection to have a unidirectional cyclist crossing. We have recommended to close the channelized right turn for this option here and provide that dedicated right turn and some more space for our transit users to line up to then, get into their priority lane coming down the hill. The other side is the option A and B. You have the multi-use pathway, and it's going to transition to the unidirectional raised facility. The difference between this concept C here as well as A is both sides are raised in a protected, both horizontal and vertically raised facility. So therefore you have that little bit more separation. You're not at the same level of the vehicle users. You're actually raised and also horizontally and vertically separated. We've maintained the sidewalk on the harbor side coming down the hill as well. So therefore it'd be a parallel cycle lane and sidewalk facility. Next slide. So to come down the hill, it's the same facility. So we have the unidirectional cycle lanes on both sides, both that are raised behind the curb, a boulevard buffer there as well to kind of help that horizontal separation, but you're also vertically lifted near the same height as the sidewalk users. We do have a dedicated lane for transit, both inbound and outbound, and we have one vehicle lane provided. So as we continue down the hill, this option continues until we get to that Church Street crossing, again, similar to A, where we cross our cyclist users that are on the non-harbor front or non-water side, I should say the Dartmouth Common side. We amalgamate them both on the same side, so the harbor front side, in a bi-directional facility that is still removed from the vehicles behind the curb and in a raised, both horizontally and vertically facility. Parallel sidewalk is still provided, and this facility continues all the way down to Alderney Ochterlony, where then we transition to that multi-use pathway so that those that would like to access the Dartmouth Harbourfront Trail are just in a combined facility for a short stretch to make that access. And I should note that the transit is still shown here on the approach to the Alderney Ochterlony intersection. So lots going on here. So of course, anywhere you saw a red X, that might be a tree impact. There's also utility impacts here as well that we've taken into account. The preferred option that is selected, of course, will illustrate those impacts a little bit further and some opportunities for us to either relocate those items, whether it's a utility pole, fire hydrant, other facilities such as lighting, or if some trees may need to be relocated or removed and replanted elsewhere. So the next section here is just a transit option that we were asked to look at specifically from Ochterlony down to the Dundas Street intersection. So what we looked at here is opportunities to reallocate the existing traffic lanes to see, can we actually have one vehicle lane and then provide a dedicated lane facility for our transit vehicles and users. So that's what we're seeing here. So the curbside lane was reallocated to the transit users, which is shown in red, and the priority diamonds. So as we make our way to the next slide, this essentially just continues down the corridor. So it comes around the corner, around past Portland Street as we keep going. It's going to bring us up to King Street here. There's some different lane on the approaches here for different traffic control measures. So if there's a right turn available, we provide a right turn lane except for transit vehicles only. And as we continue to the next slide, we asked for a nearby project that's on the go called Sawmill Creek. They're currently working on a different project there, and we just wanted to ensure that whatever we were proposing there as an option would blend well with their option. So what you're seeing on the screen here is a very high level rendering of what they plan to actually install, as that project, I believe, is out for construction or at least out for tender to be awarded for construction in the nearby future. So our facility here for the transit users would then come up to this intersection here, and that's where they would transition back to a shared lane towards the Papa intersection, the Prince Albert Alderney Papa Portland Street intersection. And there's actually a multi-use pathway proposed between I believe it's King Street and Dundas Street here that the Active Transportation Group is also looking at as an additional project. So lots on the go in Dartmouth happening right now. I'm definitely open to re-explaining if anything's needed. I know I kind of jumped through those concepts quite quickly. Perfect. So some public engagement that we've done so far, as both Maria and Brianna alluded to, is that we've completed a few public engagement sessions to date. So we were over at the Zatzman Sportsplex, or the Dartmouth Sportsplex if you grew up in the area, Wednesday and Monday in July. We had approximately 40 attendees from the neighborhood and surrounding communities provide great comments for us. And we took all those comments and they're going to be shown in the What We Heard report that will summarize all of our engagement findings through both public and stakeholders. We also did have a little pop-up there at the Alderney Landing to catch those that are coming to and from the ferry as well and catch their ideas. So a few things that we heard, quick high-level items, is that we should consider congestion during events at the Alderney Landing, Alderney Gate facility, to kind of be mindful that it does get quite busy there. What we heard is the preference to keep cyclists and pedestrians separated in their own facilities. We heard that to prioritize transit to move most people as possible along the corridor. Build for the future is something else we heard, as well as option C seemed to be the strongest light at that time when we got Maria to pull some quick snapshots for us for the survey, as it's still open right now. So as I mentioned, the survey is still open. So of course, if you would like this link, I'm sure Maria can provide it. Or of course, if you do a quick Google search for Alderney Drive, Shape Your City, I'm sure it should pop up quite near the top. That will be open to August 23rd. And of course, after that, Maria will pull in all the information for us, and we're going to summarize that in our What We Heard report. Maria did mention that there is a site walkthrough happening next week, Monday the 26th from 1 to 3 and Wednesday the 28th from 1:30 to 3:30. If you're interested in participating in either of those events, please reach out to Maria directly and she'll help coordinate with timing, where we're meeting, and the plan for those events. So as I mentioned, we did receive some preliminary feedback. They definitely said we've heard some kind of mixed feedback, of course. So get rid of parking along Alderney Drive. We heard from the public that is quite a little bit of a chaotic when you're coming around the corner there and you're not expecting to see on-street parking, and all of a sudden you're right at the back of a car that you weren't expecting to see. So that's something that we did hear from the public. There's been some concerns noted about the impact potentially in the Dartmouth Common retaining wall, any of the mature trees that might be there. So that's something that we're going to consider as, of course, we're reviewing and evaluating the options. So this is a little bit outside the project scope area. However, part of the active transportation network in the nearby area is to keep Lyle Street and Shore Road as an option for cyclists to utilize, which of course, we're not hindering any of those options there, as is of course providing an option to get access to those would be important. We heard not to reduce the number of vehicle lanes, and we also heard better cycling connections to Auckland and Portland Street would be nice to have. So those are some quick snapshots that we've seen so far. So our next steps, as we kind of alluded to here, we'll kind of skip this one, Brianna, here. We're actually, one more, there we go. So we're at the public and stakeholder engagement portion right now. So of course we're presenting to your group here, as well as we're presenting to the ATAC group on Thursday to get some feedback, answer any questions, of course, hopefully promote the online survey that will be closing on Friday, that if you guys would like to fill those out or pass to your friends, family, neighbors, that'd be greatly appreciated. We're looking for all the feedback we can get, of course, at this stage to help select the preferred option. So next slide. We're going to take all that feedback. We're going to pull in our evaluation. We're going to meet with the HRM technical committee as well to kind of showcase what have we seen so far based on feedback, as well as how are the options laying out based on the priorities of the project. And that will then help gear us towards developing a 30% design, some construction cost estimates, and wrapping up a functional plan for HRM to utilize, hopefully, and getting something built along this corridor, as it currently is a gap in our network. That's everything from us. I believe, Maria, you might have some questions for the group here to kind of think about as they're going through their own questions for us to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Courtney. That was great. And Brianna, perfect. I know it was a little fast, and I feel a little bit sad sorry for Sydney, because she was going full tilt. But anyway, I appreciate that. I don't know, I don't have a lot of time, and maybe I guess first of all, if there's any questions of clarification, and the other, I could send the questions to the committee. I guess it depends on time, but also I could just generally ask you if you have any questions about the concepts. If you missed something, like what are you talking about, multi-use path, or do you feel comfortable walking and cycling on the same path? But also, I guess not more. Well, it is more importantly, which concept do you prefer, or do you see causing a lot of difficulty? So we'd like your feedback on those ideas.
Great. Thank you, Maria and Courtney and Brianna. We'll now ask members for their questions and comments. As mentioned beforehand, the legislative assistant will keep track of our time. Let's use it wisely to give time for our last presentation for today. The first in line is Rochelle Minette.
Thank you. God, there's like sun right in my face. Thank you for that presentation. Lots of detail, lots to think about. I don't live in the Dartmouth area, and I find I don't normally drive there. I guess during what would be considered rush hour, but I imagine that someone who does would have much more strong opinions about like car lanes and things. But in general, I don't love multi-use pathways. If there's options for not that is often, I don't know. Personally, I find that a lot better. But also, and now I can't remember which plan included multi-use pathways and which ones didn't, but in general, like I agree with, I think there was a comment that someone made in some of your like larger engagement sessions, that like focusing on transit because it moves more people and hopefully more people would like be able to use transit that way, is always, I don't know, a preference for me. I can't ride a bike, like I'm not particularly useful for like active transportation stuff because of my own disabilities. So,
Can I just ask you a question? If you don't ride a bike but you walk, do you?
I mean, not far distances, definitely
Okay.
not. I'm not good for that. Actually, I do use a car predominantly as an access like thing. But I also know that like cars have a whole other slew of impacts.
So when you're walking though, how comfortable do you feel? Like, do you know those edges, they either have the precast curbs and the boulders? We have them on Wise Road, those kinds of separations from the sidewalk and the cycle track. Or even what kind of edges do you prefer, I guess, separating you from an arterial road and the traffic?
Right.
Those kinds of feedback would be helpful.
Yeah, that is a great like clarifying question. I think like, I don't know, even an actual curb where like there is just some form of separation where like wheels go here, or like bike wheels specifically go here, and then like other wheels that are, I guess, more sort of replacements for walking in a sense, go in this other space. I find I don't do a lot of long distance walking. I'm just like not able to. But when I am, like, I don't want to be hit by a bike. So the more barrier, I suppose, the better.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. But in general, I thought like option B as sort of like a larger, if you're asking which options, like the least amount of change to the commons probably is going to be helpful for a lot of things and sort of more focus on transit. I like personally, I think is the way that I would go. So I don't have a ton to say for this one. I just wanted to throw my comments in the ring, but yeah, I'll leave it to people who have maybe more to say. So thanks.
Thank you, Rochelle. Next, we have Deputy Mayor Kathy Deagle-Gaiman. If you have it. Yes.
Thank you. At this moment, I think I'll take a pass on comments. That's a lot of information. And I almost feel like I want to go drive around, right? And have the experience and then go, maybe go on the Shape Your City and on the survey thing. So at this point, I think that's what I'll do. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you. Yeah, so, I mean, my big thing is traffic congestion, balancing that, of course, with the active transportation needs. It's quite complex. So, I mean, I just hate the thought of reducing traffic lanes. So, I'm going to fill out the survey. Thank you. That's all I have to say. It's quite these things do not go together well. So I mean, it's just very difficult, growing pain, I think, for our municipality right now.
That's true. Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Paul Russell.
Thank you very much. In looking at this, I agree with Councillor Purdy in that it is difficult to know what the right balance is between vehicle traffic and transit and pedestrian traffic, and to make sure that we are striking the right balance. So looking at each situation on its own gives us perhaps the best chance of achieving that right balance for that block or for that situation. In this case, I'm probably also going to have to go and have a look at the particular areas. As much as I don't like reducing the lanes for vehicle traffic, increasing dedicated bus lanes will help us achieve things to make transit a more appealing option. And so I can certainly see a higher priority for that. So then it becomes a discussion of transit versus, in a lot of cases, pedestrian traffic. And if we can get those two working together, then that would be amazing. I do like what I've seen here, but again, it is a lot of information to be able to wrap your head around in a fairly small geography. And so going down and getting eyes on it directly would probably make the most sense. But that's where I am with it.
And I guess that explains why the gap has been sitting there for so long, because it's a very short piece, but it's a really critical piece coming into Dartmouth. And there's a lot of people that use it. The other thing I did want to mention, I don't know if we did already say it in the presentation, but it is a bus rapid transit route. So that from the Alderney terminal down all the way to Pleasant and the rest of Dartmouth. So it's a pretty heavily used. I don't know how many bus routes go there, but there's quite a few.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit as well, kind of on the traffic side, and of course all of our lovely data that we did receive and we didn't get into because of course we already had way too much information to show everybody here today, is that what we did is at the key intersections along the corridor that are currently signalized, we kept the same number of turning lanes. So whenever you're coming up to a signalized intersection, we didn't reduce any of the turning lanes there. So if there was already a left turn lane provided or a right turn lane provided, we were able to maintain those. And that's where we see a lot of delay happen for intersections and kind of that backing up of traffic, is that if you take away a turning lane or you take away that capacity for that turning movement, that's where we see a lot of the delay. However, that through lane that we did keep there will definitely keep the traffic moving. That's why we did collect so much traffic data, because of course some of the options we have to work with within the curb to curb space is reallocating one of those lanes, one of the traffic lanes, to a dedicated transit lane. And of course that can be a little bit scary when it comes to congestion, of course. But what we did see through our analysis is that the corridor was still able to move very well. Of course, whenever there's an event or a big flux of, say, of traffic coming to an area, anywhere as in HRM, you're going to see some delays, of course, but on a typical AM morning commute or a PM coming home, for example, the traffic was moving quite well. And as Maria just mentioned, this is a critical gap in our bus rapid transit corridor that's going to work with the Portland Street project. That's kind of just up the hill a little bit. And then, of course, also get us over to the bridge terminal and the McDonald Bridge to cross. So key gap in the area, we're just trying to figure out how we can balance everything. But if you're concerned about the traffic, definitely it was brought to our attention at the most recent event. And of course, it'll be quite clear in our functional plan that we pulled together.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we have Liz Dool.
Alrighty there. Just the interpreters were switching, so I was pinning different interpreters. So I usually would use that route to get to the bridge to get to Halifax, or going from Halifax to Dartmouth, and it can be really busy on that street. Usually I'll make my way around a different route just so that it's not so congested. And I've learned to avoid the streets where there's parking on the side as well. In regards to pedestrians and bike lanes, so on my street, there is a bike lane as well. And that in itself can be a bit of an obstacle. So that's what I've noticed, is that people kind of have to maneuver around those pathways. But I usually just ignore those and go into my building or to work. But that's all I had to say.
Especially during the wintertime. Yeah.
But it's important that we find a balance to share the road with the pedestrians and bikers, as well as those who drive. Because everyone's using it as well.
Yeah, and just making sure everyone has the best way, so they don't, have to waste time trying to maneuver around all there.
Yeah, and those that do have their cars have the advantage of using those different options instead of walking and wasting, an hour of your time. Rather, you can just take your car and it's a lot easier. And it can be a hassle to maneuver around all those different obstacles. But I know everyone has their different perspectives. Some people prefer to drive, some people prefer to walk or take the bike. So everyone has their own way of getting around.
Great. So as we are tight for time, we may need to, or do you still have something to share, Liz?
Yeah, it's just important to have the diversity in the community so that not everyone's using the same mode of transportation to get around. Like in the Netherlands, they bike a lot, and that's their experience, that's their way. So it's a bit of a growing pain here in Halifax, where we're trying to transition into a more bike or pedestrian friendly way of getting around.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Great, thank you. Next we have Glenn Babcock.
Okay, well, Zoom is working now. I apologize for not responding when you talked to me before.
But I wanted to highlight that you said in the comment to give to the presenter that you are in fact colorblind, so the different colors that aren't that helpful for you for previously, like for the last presentation. I wanted to just bring up that you had mentioned something.
That's true, but the one advantage I do have is that I'm also on active transportation, so I get to see all these presentations twice.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like to have a concise, well-structured response to all this, but I think I just have a bunch of random thoughts, so I apologize for that. Most of the time when we're talking about some of these transportation plans in Dartmouth, I don't know the area because I've only been back in Nova Scotia for a year and a half. This particular area, I have walked from the bus terminal on Thistle Street all the way down along Alderney and all along the Harbourfront path before, so I do know those areas pretty well. Normally I wouldn't object to the multi-use pathways if the bike riders were bike riders like me who are just going out for a leisurely bike ride. But since we're trying to also promote bikes as a form of transportation to people, for people to get where they need to go, like work, those riders often have a destination in mind and they want to go faster, and they don't really want to meander their way around pedestrians. So from that perspective, if we really want people to use bicycles as a way of getting around in the city and not just riding for leisure. I think probably the separation between walkways and bike lanes is a good idea. I would be sorry to see too much done to the trees or the commons area. I wonder if it might be possible just to, if a multi-use pathway for a short stretch might be better.
Liz
And not
was
have
saying
to do
that she fully agrees with you, Glenn, about having that separation between those who are walking and those who are biking, because those who are deaf or hard of hearing, we don't even hear the bike coming behind us. So that can be kind of scary at times. So just want to add that in.
I'm not hard of hearing, but I still can be startled by a bike coming behind me. And one of my random thoughts is I have been hit by a bike before, but that was in Halifax. So far Dartmouth is okay. What was the last point that I wanted to make was there was a comment made about the possibility of removing the street parking on Alderney. I haven't been through Alderney often enough to realize that there even was street parking there, but it does seem like it's a pretty busy stretch of road. And as long as looking at the diagrams that were being shown, it seemed like there were a fair number of parking lots along there. If there's lots of off-street parking, I would think that removing the on-street parking to give you a little more space for bikes, for people, for cars, would definitely be advantageous. And until Thursday, I think that's all my comments.
Lynn, you're muted, by the way.
Well, I just muted myself.
Thanks. I was on a roll tonight, but I had to make a couple more mistakes. It's coming. All right.
Thanks,
so next
Glenn, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Next, we have Vivian. If you would like to comment or ask a question.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of my comments were have been stated, but I just wanted to touch on, I know with the Slater Street project that was presented earlier, there was talk about using like the commons as a way to separate that path. Was that ever looked at for this project? I'm just thinking because even from that one, I don't know what's in and what's out, but when you're leaving Alderney towards downtown, putting that through the bike lane and the walking lane through the commons that way, because some of it already exists, I believe, through the commons. So I'm not sure if that would be, I know there's trees and stuff, but if that was a more feasible option to keep the spacing on the road and ensure the traffic congestion or the traffic, but also ensure that there is separation. And I agree. I think the other thing that I would say is, especially when you're coming down Thistle towards Alderney, like it is pretty steep. And so when you're cycling, if you want to talk about multi-use lane, I think it does create a potential hazard with that. So those are it.
Okay, I just wonder, that's fair to say about the hazard of going down a hill, especially if you're on a cycling and you're with somebody who's walking. The idea of going through the commons, we did look at that initially, and we looked at both in the Synod Hill Park and then the Dartmouth Commons, but we were asked not to go back into the commons. I guess there is already a multi-use path. There is one that goes from the corner of Thistle and Wise that connects up to Dahlia Street. And then we looked at, so no, we were told to avoid that if possible. So, but you know, we could take your recommendation and look at it again. I think the grades are a little bit steep there.
I'd look at it. I'd recommend that.
Yeah. The grades are steeper too, though, than if you were to go up.
The grades are going to be very challenging.
Yeah.
We're going to be challenged to meet we won't be meeting the 5%. I can almost guarantee you staying on the road, and I can almost guarantee you won't be meeting even 8 or 10% going through the Dartmouth Commons. So it's going to be even a significant more grade there. Yeah.
I was just thinking, because you know that there's the obviously it's the walking one where you walk up the sidewalk and then go up the steps there. So that if you were to figure out a way to make that extension go through the commons rather than on the road, you'd be able to keep the road space, but then be able to touch into the commons. Is that not an option?
I believe one of the HRM design team members was looking at doing a switchback, which is kind of making an S up the hill to get cyclist users kind of at that 5%
Okay.
and accessible users that can't utilize the stairs. However, the remaining portion of Dartmouth Commons is still challenging. It's not flat. So I believe that's being looked at as a separate project to see if there's anything that can be done as kind of an interim measure or something that can be more permanent, but something that can be a quick win for the area. But that's something that was brought forward to our attention as an option to look at.
Yeah, for people walking on the not the harbor side or water side, but the other side on the Dartmouth Commons side, there are those set of steps. So we certainly would like some feedback on, because I know there are a number of people that we see them even just pulling the stroller behind or whatever. They can't go up that hill, so we definitely have to do something about those set of steps for pedestrians.
Anything else, Vivian? No?
That's all.
Oh, okay, great, thanks. I'm next in line, last in line. Thank you for the presentation. I'm terrible at even board game rules and stuff, so sometimes interpreting some charts, I would probably just recommend if there's like another type of angle to see how it looks like from, instead of above, like just straight away, kind of, for me, I would have probably gotten a better idea. I'm not in Dartmouth too often enough, so I wouldn't really have much to comment on multi-use pathways. I think they only really work in very low traffic areas because, you kind of have enough time to look behind you if there is somebody biking down, but you would have to be actively looking behind you, or if there is a way of, because if you're going the same direction. So yeah, but I do agree with everybody else. It kind of needs a separation when it's on higher traffic areas. It would actually put on some stress. But I do like the idea of like multi-use pathways in areas that really does cut through. You don't have to be so trailing alongside a road, a noisy road as well. So there is kind of a nice quiet walk through those areas. But I'm kind of in agreement with everybody else on that issue with multi-use pathways in more busier places. But I will cut this short because I personally don't have enough to throw in, and we're gonna move along. I really want to thank all three of you for coming here to present, and we'll be moving on to what's next on our agenda. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the feedback.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Next on our agenda is a presentation from Alana O'Leary. Sorry if I mispronounced that one. Associate Transit Facilities, Arcadis, and Matt Glynn, Project Manager, Facility Renewal regarding Wrights Cove Transit Terminal. You have the right of way to give us your presentation.
Yeah, great, thank you. Is there an option for me to share my screen?
Yes.
So Alana, I made you the co-host, or I gave you co-host permission so you can share your slides. You should have that option now. If not, just let me know.
Yes, I do. Let me share my screen. Okay, let me know if you're able to see this. I'm quite new to Zoom.
We are able to see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, good afternoon, or I should say good evening at this point now. My name is Alana O'Halloran, and I'm one of the architects working on the design of the Wrights Cove Transit Terminal. I'm also joined online today by with Charlie Fong, who is the architect of record for this project. And today what we've prepared for you is a short presentation which will give you an overview of the project with a focus on some of the accessibility features within the design. Okay, so moving on for our presentation agenda, I'm going to start first with a very brief introduction to our project, followed by providing a very high-level overview of some of the accessibility codes and standards which are applicable for this project. Lastly, we will have a look together at some of the key accessibility design features both inside our terminal building and within the site. Okay, so moving on to the project overview. Our terminal is going to be located in Wrights Cove, which is an area within Dartmouth. The building itself is a single level terminal, which will be approximately 340 square meters in size. And really the goal here is to create a very inviting modern bus terminal, which will be universally accessible and will prioritize the experience of all passengers alike. The terminal will be able to accommodate a total of 5 buses, which will include accessibility features at all points throughout the site, both inside and outside of the building. On the slide, we've also included 2 images on the left of how we're expecting this facility to look. Within the top image, this is the view of the north side of the building. So this is actually going to be the side that will be most visible to passengers who are arriving to the terminal by bus. And on the side of the building, it does include full windows, or what we like to call glazing. And this is to allow passengers to see both in and outside of the waiting area. In the bottom image, this is a view looking from the northwest corner of our site. So here we're able to see that same north facade, which includes all of the glazing, but around the corner, we're also able to see where one of the 2 entries into the waiting area would be. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. On the slide is the project timeline. So here we've included a time bar of the project history to date, and it also shows where we're heading from here in terms of our key project dates. One thing I will mention is that this project actually did get started about 6 years ago, and early design was completed back in early 2019, which brings us up to now, where we're now trying to pick up where we last left off in order to continue refining the design. So we are anticipating that we will be finalizing our 100% drawings early next year, and we're also hoping that the facility construction will be wrapped up sometime later in the year of 2025. Okay, so on this slide, the title at the top is Terminal Accessibility Requirements. So here we've included some of the main accessibility codes and standards, which we are referring to for this project. And the purpose of following these standards is to remove barriers for people with disabilities as much as possible. The main codes and standards, which we are following for the Wrights Cove Transit Terminal, are the Nova Scotia Building Code Regulation, the National Building Code of Canada, which is referenced in the NS Building Code Regulation. And we are also following the CSA standard for accessible design for the built environment. Okay, so next we're going to move on to some of our more design-specific features. So on this slide, we've included our site plan, which is a drawing which basically looks from a bird's eye view down at our site, and it shows our building in relation to other things nearby, such as the main streets and adjacent properties. On the slide, what we first want to call attention to is the accessibility features within the civil engineering portion of our design. In general, our civil engineering design team is following the HRM Municipal Design Guidelines, otherwise known as the Red Book, and the 2021 edition does have specific sections related to accessibility. We're actually quite lucky with our site in the fact that the surrounding area is quite flat. So this is going to allow us to achieve more gentle grades. The bordering streets to our site, so we have Bancroft Lane to the south and Marketplace Drive to the west, will be gently sloped with a grade less than 2%. and our natural site slope is also less than 2%. In the middle of our site, we are going to have something around our building called a bus platform, which is hard surfacing that surrounds the 5 bus bays. The bus platform will be gently sloped at less than 2% over the entire surface, and the platform itself will be raised 150 millimeters higher than the travel lane, except at the crosswalk ramps. In addition to this, ramps will be provided at 2 locations where the crosswalks lead to the bus platform. Okay, so moving on this slide, we continue to look at our site plan, but this time we would like to focus on the signage and wayfinding features, which are related to accessibility. In general, accessibility signage for the project will conform to CSA standards. Accessible signage will be employed at entrances into the site and on wayfinding signs for direction confirmation and safety messages. One key feature of our site where accessible signage and wayfinding will be included is something called the multi-use pathway, which is located to the north of our site, and it will actually extend and connect between Windmill Road and Marketplace Drive to the west. This pathway will allow pedestrians on foot, on bike, and by wheelchair or otherwise to connect easily between the 2 streets. And it will also offer places for children to play and for people of all ages to rest within nature. Along the pathway at 2 locations closer to the intersections, we will have confirmation signage in place, which will include safety messaging. The messaging will be provided in readable high contrast text, which is tactile, and the same messaging will be repeated at the very bottom of the sign in Braille. Outside of signage that will be located along this pathway, we will also have Bay ID signs, which will be located on posts installed at the front of each of our 5 bus bays. And that also is going to include accessible messaging. The Bay ID signs will include tactile and Braille messaging, which will be installed at a height of 1,500 millimeters on center, which is the CSA standard. Okay, so moving on to our next discipline, landscape architecture. This slide provides an overview of the approach for accessibility features within our landscape design. The first accessibility feature we do want to call attention to on this slide are the different types and applications of tactile indicators which will be installed on hard ground surfaces. Tactile indicators will be included at our curb ramps, where the ramps drop down to meet crosswalks at our site. And we will also have 2 different types of tactiles used within the bus platform area, which will help to guide passengers throughout the space. Our type 1 tile is a 300 by 300 millimeter inline bar guidance tile, whereas type 2 is a dome attention tile, which will be applied in certain cases for key decision points. And right now I'll mention that the material we are proposing for all exterior tactile surfaces is cast iron, where this will ensure the greatest durability of the tactile indicators over time. Okay, so continuing still with the landscape architecture approach, this slide focuses more on the different types of benches we're going to be providing outside of the building. The landscape design includes 4 different bench types, some with backrests, some with armrests, and some with both, which conforms to CSA standards. In this diagram on the left-hand side, we're showing where wheelchair users potentially could sit either next to the benches or directly in front of it. And the benches will be provided in 3 main locations on site. So we will have benches surrounding the planters and in front of our building. The second location will be surrounding the landscaping to the north of our site. And then also will have benches provided at various locations along our multi-use pathway. Okay, so I think the last couple of slides covered off the site approach. So now we're going to have a look inside our building. So on this slide, this includes our ground floor plan, and it also includes to the right a view inside the waiting area. So you can see on the left-hand side, our building floor plan is nearly divided almost exactly in two between the more public areas and the back of house spaces, which will be used by the workers. The public area itself does include a very large waiting area, a security booth, 2 universal washrooms, so one on either end, a custodial room, which will be accessed by the service workers, and then we also have a total of 3 gender-neutral stalls. Also on this plan, what we've done, we've tried to identify with numbers some of the key accessibility features. So with number 1, we can see for pathways, we're intending to provide well-lit, distinguishable, and accessible pathways, which are minimum 1200 millimeters clear as per CSA standards. For 2, for the seating, within our waiting area, we will be providing fixed airport-style seating with armrests and required clearances. For 3 doors, certain doors within the waiting space will be equipped with push buttons and automatic door operators. So this specifically will be the doors within the 2 vestibules, and then the doors for the accessible washrooms. And lastly, number 4, glazing distraction markers are going to be applied on all of the windows which are looking into our waiting area. One other thing I would like to point out in this drawing are all the features within the universal washroom. So I'll try to zoom in if I can. So this is one of the universal washrooms here. So both universal washrooms will be designed according to all CSA standards to accommodate a variety of users, such as a disabled person with an attendant or a child with a parent. The washrooms will be designed to be barrier-free, containing the necessary washroom accessories, hardware, and finishes, and we will also be space-proofing for both an infant and an adult change table.
Elena, I really don't mean to cut too closely. We have 6 minutes before 6 o'clock. So if there is a way, I really love this presentation. If there's a way of abbreviating things a little more to give everyone a chance for question and comment, because there are a couple of people that do actually have to leave at 6 and we may lose quorum for it, just to remind. So.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I'll try to go through the next items quite quickly.
No problem. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and the last thing I just wanted to mention, the universal washrooms, we are accommodating all the latest requirements in the CSA 2023 version. I won't go through all of them, but one key feature is obviously the 2100 millimeter wheelchair turning radius. Okay, so I will very quickly go through our last slide. So our last slide is related to the signage features within the building. Just give me a second here. Okay, so we do have different types of room signage, which all will follow CSA standards. So once again, they're all going to be mounted at 1500 millimeters on center, and they will be installed always on the lock set side of the doors, so where the door handle is. Very quickly, the different types of accessible signage will be calling attention to accessible washrooms, the gender neutral washrooms. We'll be providing an office ID for the security booth. And last but not least, we will be providing information related to safety and security. And last but not least, all signage will follow current Braille and tactile standards, including using encapsulated messages, matte non-reflective surfaces, and also using universally accessible graphics, which are no greater than 6 inches in height. And I think that's pretty much it. I think at this point we can happily turn it over to Q&A.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alana, and thank you, Matthew, for also joining this presentation. We're now going to ask members for their questions and comments. First, we'll start with Rochelle Manette.
Thanks. That was so thorough, and in general, I think, Elizabeth has her hand up, and I feel like maybe we've lost quorum, so I want to give the floor to Elizabeth first.
Yes. Unless Elizabeth, you there?
Yes. So I just wanted to, I know the deputy mayor is still on the call and has to leave at 6. And I think Councillor Russell and Vivian are gone, but I don't know if you wanted to extend that chance to the deputy mayor in case she had anything to add before she has to hop off.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chair. If that's allowable, I would appreciate it. Lovely design. I don't think that we have anything quite like this. So I believe this will be a standard maybe that we'll aspire to for any new ones. But I'm curious about, and it's only just because we recently had an environment and sustainability standing committee, and we talked about being a bird-friendly city and all of these glass buildings. And so I was just a little bit curious about what the blazing distraction stuff that would be there. And the only other thing was, I just lost it, maybe because I'm supposed to be in the other meeting right now. But I know what it was. Sometimes some of the persons, a few friends of mine that do have some visual issues, all of that glass and the glare does give some of my colleagues and friends, they're a need to wear the sunglasses inside, and actually sometimes to even increase the tinting that is required. So I'm just wondering a little bit about that amount of glass and what it does for persons with low vision or vision issues. And I apologize, I will watch later for the answer because I really need to go now. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor
thank you.
Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah, so should I give an answer? And I guess she dropped off.
For sure. I think Elizabeth, we're still maintaining quorum.
We still have quorum. Yeah, the deputy mayor just had to go to another meeting at 6, but it sounds like if you're able to answer the question, Alana, then she'll watch the video later.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I think she had 2 questions. I think the first was about glazing distraction markers. So yeah, that's quite common in our designs and following CSA standards. Usually it does have to be installed at a specific height, but sometimes it can be something as simple as, a continuous horizontal band, a frit that gets installed on the glazing. And this will be on all sides of the glazing, so not just in specific areas, because we want to be very sure that no one potentially can go straight towards the glazing. I'll see if Charlie, do you have anything further to add here?
Yeah, I think she was asking about bird-friendly glass, if that's what I understood. And the frit patterns for us are always, let's say, in dots for the bird-friendly glazing, and we would be installing that in the frit pattern, and they're generally less than 4 inches or 100 millimeter spacing, and it would be detraction for the birds to essentially not fly into the glass. So we've done this in many of these facilities, and there hasn't been any issue. I could try to answer the other one too, about the glare and the glazing. So we usually also have the low EA coating for the glass. So there is a tint on it to protect the glare. We also, if you see in the images, have a cantilever canopy that also protects from the glare, so the sun wouldn't shine directly into it. So you'll see that in the renderings that we had in the beginning, and that's to protect the direct sunlight into the facilities and also provides both shade and we did also talk about some protection for the passengers that sit around the benches around as well. So there's some canopy protection around that in the entrance. So you could technically wait inside or outside and protected from the weather. Is there any other questions that I don't see?
We're going to keep with the list, I believe, because I believe that Rochelle may have also a comment or question to share.
Yeah, it was just I mean, this building looks great. Love a good accessible building. I'm really particularly excited about all the different options for washrooms, especially for like the gender neutral and like adult change tables. That's awesome. The one like comment that I have was around some of the seating pieces. You had mentioned that there was sort of like these planters that were going to have the seating next to them. I would really recommend adding a little bit of seating at each like bay to allow for people when they're like actually at the point of waiting for their bus to like be able to take a seat more sort of quickly and get up more quickly. If there's, you know, just that general like, okay, bus is coming in 2 minutes, I better like go over to my spot. That was pretty much it for me. The only thing that I could think of. I feel like a lot of the design principles are already really doing a great job. So great job. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rachel. And yeah, we'll definitely take that comment back about, yeah, maybe we can see if we can include some benches closer or at each bus bay.
Great. Next, we have Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation. It looks like a beautiful building. It kind of gives me like the Woodside Ferry vibe. It's one of our newer transit terminals there for the ferry. It's beautiful, gorgeous building. I'm glad you have the private washrooms. There's a lot of women who don't feel comfortable going into shared spaces, so it's good to have the option available there for folks who don't feel comfortable. So thank you. It looks beautiful.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Liz Dool.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I just wanted to say I'm really, really impressed with all the specific details that you brought forward. The new building plans just look great. I feel like it's important to have like a TV screen of some sort, similar to an airport that has like the terminal information, but making sure that the print or the text is large enough, because sometimes I struggle to see small text, and my eyes aren't that great, and I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way. So having the terminal or bus schedule information on TVs that is large enough to see easily, so people don't have to walk around, or, you know, if there is any glare, you know, get around that. But other than that, that was my only thought. Yeah, just thinking like, you know, sometimes if the sun's in the way, you have to walk a bit over to see the screen from another angle because of the glare.
Okay. Sorry, sometimes I don't catch that if the commentary is finished. Yes.
Oh, I do actually have one more thing. I am concerned about the planters a little bit. I am worried about people potentially going outside to smoke and then just dropping their cigarettes in the plant area, and the smell would linger a bit. I'm not sure if that would be an issue.
Okay, yes. Alana, did you have something to comment back on that? Because I'm just trying to understand, because we're trying to keep a flow to.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you, Liz, for the really thoughtful comments. Yeah, the information about you know, bus arrival, I think we are anticipating we're definitely going to have that information within the waiting area, because we understand not everyone's going to be waiting outside for the buses, especially during the very cold winter months, and they might not have a direct view to some of the buses. So yes, it's very key to have that passenger information being on display, and understood that the text needs to be legible for everyone to be able to read. And thank you for the comment about the planters. Definitely that's a concern if people plan to drop their cigarette butts into that area. Something we'll definitely have to look further into as a mitigation measure potentially.
Great, thanks. Next we have Glenn Babcock.
Hey, sorry, I had actually made notes and have comments this time, but so the signage, one of them, it was already brought up. I will just say the monitor inside the terminal is great. My experience with some of the transit systems in Ontario, years ago, I used to use a monocular to see things, which is just a small handheld telescope that you carry around with you. So it would have no trouble reading some of the signs that were at the bus bays. But nobody really carries a monocular anymore because everybody has a smartphone, and you can use your smartphone like a monocular, like a telescope. The problem is when you zoom in on some of those signs, there's a refresh rate to the phone and there's a refresh rate to the sign, and the signs become unreadable if you're using your phone to try to magnify them and read them. So if you ever need any input on how to make the signs, the electronic information signs at the bays more readable, that's something to keep in mind. Maybe happy to help if I can. But yeah, so you're already labeling the bus bays very well, but knowing where to go to get to the right bay, to catch the right bus and get on the right route is obviously incredibly important. Otherwise, you don't need the terminal. I also had written down the question whether people were really ready for the gender neutral washroom. And I think that the universal ones will probably be the more heavily used ones for the most part. But I guess that's the way of the future. The only other question I had, and this goes back to your diagram of the whole layout of the terminal with the roads next to it. And it looked like the roads were just on the other side of the buses. And the question that came to mind is, unless you've arrived on a bus or you've walked to the terminal, if my wife wanted to drive me to the terminal and drop me off, where does she drop me off? Where does she pick me up?
Yeah, thank you, Glenna. That's a very good question. I know definitely in some projects we've worked on here in Toronto, larger subway projects, sometimes there's something called a designated pick up and drop off area. And so then sometimes you'll have a lay-by that's designated within the right of way. We don't have that currently within our project scope included within the road redesign. So it does beg a very good question of where people are going to drop off their loved ones if they're going to catch a bus.
Because you'll have them dropping them off on the other side of the road and their bus is going to be there and they're going to run to catch the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So anything else to add, Glenn?
Nope, that was all of them.
Oh, it's great. Okay, cool. Last but not least, I'm always at the down of the list. The first one is gender neutral bathrooms. They actually really work. I go to Woodside Ferry Terminal and I actually really appreciate the separation. The only critique I have is that the walls are so small that you feel claustrophobic within these spaces. And especially if you're either a parent or you're working respite, if you do have a disabled individual to attend to, it's a very small space. So sometimes there's some stalls that we can go. We don't necessarily have to go to a universal bathroom that's much bigger. Sometimes we can actually man it the other way. So that would be one thing. Last but not least, as we all mentioned, the glass aesthetic, the architecture. I guess the glass obviously serves a purpose so we can see the buses come and go. However, as a neurodivergent, I can really tell you right now, the echoes that are caused by glass and hard surfaces is a really, really big deal, especially in spaces like this when it gets really busy. A lot of us get a little agitated or dysregulated from the sound of sensory overwhelm. So I would highly recommend to look into acoustic paneling to offset the echoes that goes by the usage of hard surfaces and glass. So that would be more of a comment. I don't really have a question.
No, it's a great comment, Celine. And yeah, I know we didn't quite have a chance to go over the materials for the interior today, but I do know we're definitely proposing metal acoustic panels to hopefully absorb some of that sound in our ceiling surface at least. But yeah, no, completely understand that
It's
we
even like a
definitely-
public art project to fund where somebody can really create some sort of paneling. And I know that it's being applied more and more at libraries. Like it really does go a long way, even helps with, again, like at terminals, you get all walks of people. And, you know, it does help create a more serene environment for people to stay serene. But if they're overwhelmed, that's where emotional dysregulation can also come into play. So it definitely would actually help with that as well.
Yeah, no, agreed. Great feedback. And yes, we'll definitely have to look into the acoustics of the waiting area, definitely more in our design phase.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I also wanted to say thank you to Charlie. I had only said thank you to Alana and Matthew, but because of the way that Zoom works, I couldn't see you. So I just wanted to say a big nod. So this would be the end of this presentation. It seems like because we are 13 minutes over 6 o'clock. So I don't know if anybody has any added items. I don't think there's any added items. Going once, going twice. I think Liz wants to say something.
I move that the meeting be adjourned.
Oh, okay, so Liz is moving that the meeting is okay. It's going to be.
There are a few more items. There's no added items, but I just I would go over 11, which is the date of the next meeting, and then call for an adjournment.
Exactly. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, so the date of the next meeting will be delayed to make space for the upcoming municipal election. So there will be no meeting in September. There is still October in question. I'm personally submitting an item because I'd like to bring up housing and homelessness before the election, given winter is coming. And I'd like to know more about what is planned for 2024, 2025. So that is one thing I'm working on. So if anybody else has an item or want to support this item, that they get in touch with Elizabeth. And then that would be that. We will have a meeting on November 18th, and we'll also have December 9th if required. So that's also an option. And if anybody wants to get in contact about that. And now for the adjournment, I do have a mover. Liz is a mover to adjourn this meeting.
Liz just wanted to ask something.
Right.
Yeah, so I understand that we have the elections coming up in September. So will the elections be open to the public? Like, will there be an interpreter there? Like if a debate is happening or an event is set up, will there be an interpreter available, or will there be copies of the information available in Braille for those who are blind? I'm just curious if there are accommodations for those who need them.
Liz, I can follow up with you with some information over email following the meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there. That's it. Yeah. So if you can get back to me with that, that'd be great.
All right, great. So that's it. If anybody has anything to add, just get in touch with Elizabeth. And now for the adjournment, we will recognize that Liz is moving the adjournment of this meeting. So now we have a mover, and we'll call this meeting adjourned. I wish you all a great end of summer, and I will see you all back in a couple of months. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Oh, that was a busy one. That was a busy meeting.
Okay, thanks.